How you doing, John?
Good. Good.
Good.
Glad to be here, actually.
Good.
I think we've got to energize the audience a little bit, though.
Yeah, we will.
I'm not going to get them to stand up.
You going to dance or sing?
No, they need to.
Oh, they
not me.
need. Okay, all right. Well, we'll ask them some questions, and you can,
all right.
and we can get them to ask you some as well. So back to the AI question. Just tell us a little more on how you think about AI. You know, how do you make sense of it? Right. This is not the first technology trend you've lived through.
Yeah. So I kind of described the framework, but I think when you were talking about DBS, I think that's the closest to how I think about it.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is it's just moving so quickly. I think back to 18 months ago when everybody was talking about large language models, and it was almost like it seemed, and I think seem is a very important word, it seemed like a general intelligence. But actually, the more I get into this and the more I watch what other sort of industry players are doing, it's breaking the problem up. And it's a bit like you see the reasoning approach that's come in with deep research, and that is, what's your arithmetic problem? What's your statistical problem? What's a problem that's generative? And I think which one actually does require reasoning and processing and working through. So what I've really been thinking about this a lot is you need to think about this as a hot swappable model. So whatever you're using today, you're not going to be using in 6 months' time, I suspect. So we've been thinking about, and the way DBS described it, like clean up your data, get it all in one place, and then have AI as a service, where you can swap in models. You have something that actually looks at, depending on what your responsible AI framework is, how do you test it to make sure it's explainable? How do you test it to make sure that it is compliant with law as a minimum, meets all of your social obligations, etc. So we're thinking about it as this amorphous thing that is going to change shape, but what are the key platforms that you need to manage it? And that's what we've been building to run it.
And do you blend them all together? The machine learning, the agentic robotics, or do you look at them in separate chunks?
So we definitely look at machine vision separately. So out in our stores, we built we call it the Intelligent Edge backbone. We're clearly not in marketing, but it basically has GPUs in all of our stores or most of our stores, and then we use that for machine vision and then using eventing to do next best action. We treat that differently, but it's still a model, but it uses different different technology to manage it. Really.
How's that working? The next best action.
Well, the next best action will tell someone whether they should fill something in, like on a shelf.
Right.
So think about cornflakes as an example. If cornflakes aren't selling, they're probably not on the shelf. They're just a high velocity product. So we infer from that and you have to look up the data to say, is there a cage in the back with it? Right. So you go to the back, you get it, and then you put it if it's not selling at the velocity or if it has sold. So it does inference, and then the event tells the person what to do. Right. And that's just another one of those fabrics that we just think is going to drive massive efficiency in the store. Because there's always more things to do in retail than there are people to do it. Right? And especially in a business like ours, which is 4% margin before we pay tax. Right? So it's...
Great point. Yeah. So what are some other use case examples that have created value for you and learning?
Well, I mean, if we kind of talk to generative, just because it's the one that everybody is looking at, we've just been launching a HR bot. And so for internal purposes, people would call up, we'd had, a workforce of 115,000 people. You'd get,
Sorry, how many?
115,000, right? So you could imagine the volume of calls, and they want to know, like, what's my leave entitlement, or I'm about to have a baby, what's the policy? And they would struggle to find it through our intranet. So now we've loaded that in. We understand what role they're in, and then we're using generative AI to answer that. And just to kind of give you a cost contrast, because when all of these things have got to hit the bottom line, the typical call would cost anywhere between $8 and $10 to answer what is really just a knowledge lookup question, because they just struggled on the intranet. And then you're down to 10 cents to answer the question. It's actually customized. It's fast for the person. They can ask it, and there's no shame to what they ask. We have built an enormous amount of what we call guardrails around it, the responsible AI framework. And that's an example of a very tangible bottom
great
line.
one, yeah.
There are other ones that are way more
Just
complicated.
pause for 1 second. I'd love to get a
no, sorry,
complicated one, but I just want to take your advice and get some people engaging. How many people in the room, hands up, who have attempted a Gen AI application in HR in the last 12 months?
All right, quite a few.
Very few. Wow. And leave your hands up if it's been created a lot of value. Okay, great. Excellent, thank you. What about a more complicated one that you alluded to?
Well, there's one that I can't give you the specific detail,
Sure.
but I'll just kind of give you a general idea. The reason why I can't give you because we want to launch it and I don't want anyone else to steal the idea. And
Must be good.
it's a really cool idea, but the thing about this, I think that the power in these tools is actually the imagination that you apply to it.
Right.
I don't think it's the technology is good, but I think you can get the technology from lots of places,
Right.
like the foundational models.
Right.
So this one, we actually built it and this is where I use the word seam. We built it in 6 weeks. It looked like it would solve all of these customer problems for you. And then we discovered all of the issues and continue to find issues with it. Because you're taking on, like if you're solving a lot of customer problems, you're taking a lot of responsibility.
Risk.
Risk and responsibility. And so therefore, you have to think about all of the scenarios that sit around it. Like if I'm giving you dietary advice, are you actually getting enough calories? Is it an extreme diet?
Probably.
Are you getting the right nutrients? Like what's the responsibility that you take on there? Right. And then how do you make sure that, you have to clean up your data as well. Because if I'm giving you advice and saying that something is gluten-free and it's not, or nut allergies and it's not, or it's halal and actually when you go through the supply chain and it's not, right. You actually have to make sure that everything is in a good state before you're doing anything with that.
That's a great point.
So there's a lot of, it's not about the tech, it's about all of the responsibilities that sit around it.
So is that a proprietary AI effort? Or is it's an app that sits on a framework you bought? Or?
So we have built a lot of classic machine learning models.
Okay.
Like any given day, we would do 109 billion predictions of what should be in the store when, right? So it's enormous. I was actually, as you were describing it, I was thinking, if you had have asked me 18 months ago, I said we were in stage 4, I feel like we're going backwards.
Going back, right.
And the reason why we're going backwards is the stuff that we built ourselves, I don't think we need to build ourselves anymore.
Right.
Like why would I build a proprietary model if I can just get it out of Hugging Face? Like it doesn't make any sense to me. So there's this sense of what do we do? Stuff that we had to build ourselves, I don't have to build anymore.
Yeah.
But what becomes important is my data.
That's so important.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I've regressed.
Okay. No, it's good. I want to sort of pivot to the role of the CIO.
Yeah.
For as long as I've known you, you've been a CIO. You were a CIO at NAB a few years ago, we'll say.
Yeah.
At Post as well. Big, difficult businesses to run in Australia. So I'd love to get a sense of how you see the role of the CIO changing. And I want to dig into after that decision rights.
Yeah.
Because I think we're finding that a hugely hot topic in organizations.
I should put my glasses back on to see all the distraught faces.
Yeah, exactly. So just give us your view on, how it's changing. You saw Jim's 3 stages earlier. What's your personal roadmap?
Yeah. So I do think that the role has changed a lot. And there was a moment when I wasn't a CIO, when I was at Australia Post, which was a transformation role.
That's right, you were transformation.
Which had, it was the craziest time because it was during the whole Australia Post Watch saga and I was looking after government relations and media and strategy and so on. It was all the tools to transform the business, right? And I think as a CIO, I learned a lot about not being the CIO because you start to see what is it the organization needs. And it repositioned my view on what a CIO should do, which is actually, it's much more of a business leader role, and it happens to have technology in it. And actually, I think our roles are transformational leaders and to agitate and to bring that to the business, but do it in a way that meets them where they are. Too often, we try and explain things in technology terms. If you start there, you're starting in the wrong place and you won't get to value. So I think that is the first part. Of the role, such an important part, and I'm still learning this lesson, is be clear on what you do, and even more importantly, what you're not willing to do. I see lots of technologists are incredibly optimistic, and they believe that you can achieve anything, which is true, but can you do it in the constraints and the cost, the time frame, and be clear on the capabilities that you have and that you don't have. So I think it's almost like an expectation manager at some level, as much as a technology leader.
It's a great point. And 4% margin doesn't give you a lot of leeway, So I grew up in retail. My parents had retail shops, and it's just very difficult. So let's say you're going for another CIO job, or you're on a board.
Yeah.
And what would you argue that is non-negotiable, that a CIO must have decision rights for?
Yeah. So I think that what I would be super clear on is, I kind of think, what are you doing when you're running tech? Mm-hmm. You need to have architectural decision rights. Like, even if it's a credit card spend, right? So you've got to get procurement lined up to help you on that front. But you need to have that. You need to own the, what choices, what software, what gets bought, what doesn't get bought, what gets integrated, what doesn't get integrated.
Enterprise-wide.
Enterprise-wide. If you are the group CIO, you have to have that.
I'm just looking to see if you have any stab wounds in the back of your...
I definitely have a few, some in the face as well. There are some great business colleagues who will tell you straight to your face, like, we're not doing that. And so you just got to keep working at it. But I don't think I was clear enough in this role at the beginning that right. was it. And so sometimes you actually spend more emotional work recovering than you do at the beginning.
Sure.
Right? I was always clear that I had architecture.
Right.
But there were decisions, like, you have to translate, what does that mean? Like, we understand what that means, but does everybody else understand? That means you do not buy an application unless I sign it off. So now at the Capital Approval Committee, it's very clear, nothing gets approved over $100,000 unless I have signed it off.
So this answer might be blindingly obvious, but why?
That is a good question, actually.
Why?
The best questions are the ones that are hard to answer.
Right.
Because people expect that I will make things cheaper and faster. Yeah. And I call it the agility trap. Like, you can go and add things very quickly, and businesses do it all the time, right? But what happens is, over time, it's like cholesterol building up in your arteries. And eventually, the heart that pumps cannot get through it because there's just so many things there. Or imagine you're swimming through an ocean, right? It's much easier when it's clear. Right. But if you're swimming through seaweed, like, it's hard. And that's what I think many organizations have built up. I was talking to another organization yesterday, and they have a very simple policy. It has to be a standard application. We do not modify it. I mean, the discipline required to do that. And, they're a multi-billion-dollar organization with less than 100 IT staff because of the discipline of doing that. Whereas...
It wasn't a bank, though.
It definitely wasn't a bank. I tell you, a bank, spending, like the major banks, they're spending $1.5 billion building that complexity every year. So to unpick that...
It's a big job.
It's a big job.
Yeah. So let's just dig into this one more thing, and then I want to ask you about engaging with your business colleagues. So if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is the business leaders can decide what to do.
Yeah.
But you and your team have to have decision rights on how.
Yeah.
Particularly on cyber, integration, data, all that stuff.
Yeah,
right?
Actually, I didn't get past the architecture point, did
I know, but I was just going a bit further ahead, right? So I don't hear that everywhere, right? Yeah. I hear a lot of other... DBS has two in the box, right? And joint accountability for bottom line value, which in some ways is what you do too. So I guess my question is, as we democratize technology, which seems to be an unstoppable trend, is this philosophy going to work? I know it'll work. Is it doable?
Is it doable? I think... So what is really clear is, just because you have those decision rights doesn't mean that you make the decision by yourself.
Okay.
It's not a dictatorship. As much
you
as
have the last call.
Yeah, but you have to do a lot of emotional work with your business stakeholders.
Got it.
Because they'll come with something.
Right.
So just because you have decision rights doesn't mean you have the right to no debate.
Right.
And so, like, that always plays out. And actually, the hardest things have been ones where somebody's been introduced something from a powerful stakeholder.
Right.
So you always have to do that work, because I think that's an important tension in the system. Because you can make architectural decisions that are well beyond your financial decision rights. Like I could make a decision to spend $1 billion on something that's actually that's a board decision.
Right.
So there's controls in this, and I don't want you to think that you go to Coles and the CTO sits there and has a beautiful clean picture and everybody just does what they say. It's definitely not like that.
Right. We only have 2 minutes left. That went fast. So I have 2 more questions for you. One is, what has worked best for you in engaging your CEO and top management team in that kind of joint decision making, both on the hook, risk versus return balance?
Yeah, I used to think that my job was to be the expert and to know everything. And even if that was true, that doesn't work emotionally with the board. No. And so the thing that I've learned is you bring in experts and let them tell the story. I mean, you choose the ones that are going to align with what you're trying to achieve. And I would say study tour, because it shows people what's possible. As you were describing, Peter, the other organizations and their maturity, like I had all these ideas that were kind of like, oh yeah, that and this and that. And I think for business users, showing them and translating it into business outcomes and having other people illustrate what is possible helps them to see what is possible, and then you work together to deliver that. I found that's the most successful.
It's a great miss. MIT's motto is mens humanus, mind in hand, but the real motto, the down and dirty motto, is demo or die.
Right.
And I think that's just so good. What % of your time as CIO or CTO would you spend working with business colleagues as opposed to your own teams, partners, customers? What do you reckon?
I would say not enough is the sort of self-assessment. But I think you need to actually spend, I would say, more than half of your time on that, because the job as a CIO is to make it easier for your team, and cleaning that up is really important.
So we measure that through diaries of CIOs, and the top performing firms' CIOs spend somewhere around 40% of their time with their peer colleagues. Last question, and it's completely off topic, is you're a writer. So I hear, and as am I, but you write novels and other things as too. Why? What drives you to do that? It's such an interesting passion.
So I should disclose, I've got 2 more days at Coles, and then I'm off to write novels. So the reason why do I do it, I think it's the only thing that really completely absorbs myself. Like I get completely submerged. The next closest is tech strategy, and then people. No, I'm being really serious. So I'm going to do writing, and then I'm going to do a bit of strategy and maybe a bit of interim CTO work to keep myself interested, because it's such we are in the most amazing time from a tech perspective.
Yeah, it's